My name is David Misbach. I am the groundwater section supervisor here at the Nebraska Department of Environment and Energy. And this is our groundwater model that we use to demonstrate groundwater flow, how aquifers work. It's actually a live demonstration of how groundwater flows through the environment under your feet. So we use this for schools. The NRDs use it a lot. It's been to the state fair, it's been to county fairs, but it's a very dynamic model that was made by the University of Nebraska, and we purchased it about 3 years ago. We are going to show you how to unload the groundwater model out of the trailer. So there are keys, the locks are matched. Unlock both locks. This flips up. You have to push up pretty hard. Pull it all the way out to the side, hang your lock. Same thing on the other side. Unlock, open up. So now your door is ready to come down. We just pull on this, bring it all the way to the floor. You flip the ramp open. There should be a board laying next to the model that fills this void between the gate and the trailer so that the model doesn't get stuck. You lay that in the gap. If the board doesn't fit, you need to lower the front of the trailer. There's a board across the bottom that holds the model from falling or rolling back. You just pull these two pins, set it off to the side. So after your ratchet straps are off, you're ready to roll the model out. You need to make sure that these two wheels are the rotating or the swiveling wheels. The wheels on the other side of the model are affixed. These have to rotate in order to steer it off. If the model's loaded backwards, it's a two-person job because the front end may rotate around on you. All right, I've removed, this is the working portion of the model. I have removed the sliding doors to show you a little better. There's a yellow cord that needs to be removed. This will be plugged in. This is your power source. In the center, there's a centrifugal pump that has two hoses so you can fill the model. And if you're familiar with the centrifugal pump, it always needs water. I've marked on here the arrows which way the water goes. So if you're going to suck water out of a bucket, this goes in the bucket, you can fill the model. If you want to remove water from the bucket or from the model, you can put the suction in there and put it into a bucket. In order to power this pump, you just flip this toggle switch. You just have to remember that this pump always requires water. The other workings of this model are two peristaltic pumps. This peristaltic pump puts water into the model. This peristaltic pump takes water out of the model. With a peristaltic pump, it doesn't matter. You can leave them running the entire time. They both have power switches. They both are adjustable for how much water you want to move. We'll go through the workings of the peristaltic pumps later. So now I'm going to get ready to put water in the model. When you receive the model, all of the valves should be open in order for the model to drain. So before water is placed in the model, you need to go through and close all of the valves. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of these. This is the drain valve needs to be closed, and this is a drain valve that needs to be closed. Otherwise, when you pump water into the model, it'll drain out on the floor. So the model is ready to fill with water. So now we're ready to fill the model. So we use the centrifugal pump in the center, and again, the hoses are marked. So if water's coming out, this is the suction hose, it goes in the bucket. The other end is marked that water goes out, and we're going to put it in this tank. Once you flip the toggle switch on this centrifugal pump, it'll take a couple minutes to move water from the bucket to the tank. The main thing is that you don't run this dry because this pump will burn up. So here's what it sounds like. So now that we have water, we've transferred water into this tank, we're going to put water from this tank into the model using this centrifugal pump. It has a toggle switch down here that turns it on. It's the little green light. This knob controls the speed. And there's a toggle switch that runs it forwards and backwards. So if water is not going into your model, you need to switch this back and forth, but it should be set right. So here goes. What we're doing is we're pumping water from the tank into the model. There's 3 levels. There's the upper portion, there's the middle portion, and there's the lower portion. What you try and do is you try and equalize the amount of water that's going into each of these aquifers by, I used a hose clamp on this one to slow it down so that these other 2 would flow. And I'm waiting for water. These 3 outlets actually drain the water. If the water gets too high, it'll drain back into the tank. If you want water to be higher, you just simply turn these up and it'll increase the head in each one of the aquifers. So now you can see that the head is this high compared to that. If I lower it, it drops back down. So you can control how much water is in each aquifer by just moving these back and forth. So this is the public side of the model, and it does have things labeled, like the coarse wedge is a wedge of coarser material in an aquifer, the confining layer, an artesian aquifer, which we'll discuss in a minute. These are observation wells. This is a pumping well. I'll show you how to use that. This is a lake, and I showed you the rain earlier that's filling that lake. Another pumping well. So groundwater is moving from this side of the model to this side of the model. So we've created an artificial flow, high head to low head. So everything that comes over here drains back into the waste tank. Everything that comes from there comes from the tank that we filled at the beginning. So I'm going to go ahead and fire the model back up. And I might add that we have lots of rags. The model is made out of plastic that's glued together, and it rides down the road, and it does leak a little bit. So we always try and mop up things so it doesn't look like too much of a mess. So I'm going to move around to the working side of the model. Again, I'm going to start pumping water from this side, and then we'll show you if you fire up the other peristaltic pump. This is the suction end of the other peristaltic pump. You just turn it on like the other one, and I'll show you how to use this as a pump, and we can move water with it. So I'm going to turn them both on, so I'll be right back. We can remove water from the model with this little apparatus, and it'll act like a pump. So if I want to pump water from this well, you can actually just stick the pump in, and water will come out of that well if there were water there. Hang on. Let's try this well. There. Now you can see water being removed. And if you pump long enough, it'll actually start lowering the water table in the area of the well, and it'll start a cone of depression. So I can pump water out of any well I want to. I'm going to leave that one pump, and we'll see if that starts to dry out the surface. In the meantime, there's an artesian well here, which is connected to the confining aquifer, and you need to get the head in the lower aquifer by raising this hose like we showed earlier. You raise this hose and increase the head in the lower aquifer. So what I'm doing is I've raised this hose, and I'm trying to get the water table higher than the actual well head. So I need to pull out a hose just a minute. Okay. So we're going to see if that happens. You can see that the head in the lower aquifer is up to here, which is over this artesian well, and eventually it's going to start pumping water out. Back to this one. I think you could probably see it's starting to dry up around the well itself. I usually like a better, let's try this one. And yes, with everything, groundwater is slow. So I like to start my model. It's nice to see this wetting front to show people the wetting front, but if you have an audience, it's nice to have the model working and test everything so that you're not standing here and saying, well, this should work, like I'm doing. You can start to see it, the drying action of the sand. So we should start to see a cone of depression from me pumping. I can see it on the back. We're lowering the water table around the well. This is called a cone of depression. So the water table is flowing this way, and it's actually going down and we're being pumped out. So this will be dry, and pretty soon the well will actually go dry because we've pumped all the water out of this aquifer. So now we're going to show you how to use these contaminant. I think we'll use this tank. So we have a dye bucket. There's a plastic bucket in there that has all the dyes. Now these dyes are they are forever, meaning they're water-based, but they're concentrated. So we have them in the bucket, so we try not to get them on ourselves. There's a couple syringes inside the bucket, and you simply put dye in, and you can stick it on the well, and you put it in. So we're gonna put a little dye in this. I think I'm going to use this red. I think I'm not going to use that red. I think I'm going to use this. There we go. So you just have to be careful that this dye will stain your clothing. So I like to do it on the other side where the kids aren't. I don't let the kids ever do this. So you simply just put it in. Maybe I'll put a little more in there. So now we've got a contaminant in this tank. Make sure you put your lid back on your dye so you don't spill it on somebody. And then what I like to do is show the effects of if we start pumping from this well. There you can just barely see it. You've got a yellow hinge just coming out of the tank now. That's starting to lower. So we'll pump that water across. So if there was an underground storage tank that leaked into the groundwater, you could put a well next to it and you could physically pump that water, the contaminated water, out of the aquifer with a pumping well like this. They call this a recovery well. So we've lowered the water table enough that dye has moved out and it's starting to migrate across to this well. Brighter colors work better. So the blues, the reds. The model, once you're done with the model, there's a proper way to get all the water out for transport. The reason we do that is because it could build up some mold, or in this case, there's some iron oxidation that happens and then we have to take everything out and clean it. So there's a pretty simple way to do this. Again, when we started this, we closed all of these yellow valves for drainage. Now we're going to open them. So you just go along and you open each one of these valves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we already had this one open. So what's happening is water that's in the model is now draining out of these lines. And it drains down and back into the tank. We already have this valve open. It's slow as paint drying. So in order to speed this up, you take the pump end and you can disconnect this small tube from this larger one, put that aside, and this one will connect to the drain portion. This valve says drain, and you open it up. So now you have suction, and you just go back to your peristaltic pump on the suction end and you turn it on. So now the peristaltic pump is starting to remove. You can actually watch the water table drop, but it's actually removing water You can see it go through the drain lines, and you can just let it go. You can see the water table starting to drop in the model, and you're going to try and pump all the water out of each one of these aquifers and let it go. There's also a drain on this end, and I usually like to drain it to, well, it'll probably be better if we use the suction. When we get done, you just open this valve and you can drain all of these pipes so there's no water. This model sometimes sits outside and we don't want it to freeze and break, so we try and get as much water out of it as we can. And when you're done, you just leave all of these valves open, shut the pump off, and it should dry out. So as the model is draining, we need to remove the water that's left over from the input tank, and then eventually we'll drain the waste tank, but it's the same. Use the centrifugal pump. Again, it has an arrow which way the water's flowing, so this is the suction end, and you just physically put it in. It's got a weight in it. It'll go to the bottom. The discharge end, you place in your bucket. You go back to your toggle switch, and you should have water.